It's awesome to see you all. Thank you for coming. I've missed you all. Welcome to anyone who's new. I don't know how everyone's feeling tonight. I know I have a little bit of a migraine coming on, so we're all just in this together, trying to manage and support each other. So I do appreciate the community and happy to have some mindfulness for us all tonight. Just a few things before we get started that I like to let people know. Just that, for the purposes of our art therapy group, you really don't need to be a formal artist. And I like to say that just because sometimes people get a little intimidated about making art. And so it's not about what you create, it's about the experience of mindfulness through art making. Okay, so you'll get the gist as we go. I'm going to lead you in a guided meditation for about 10 minutes or so. And then there's going to be some time for you to create your own artwork around the theme of the night, which will be just a check-in really, and something I like to call an internal weather report. So you can imagine how you're feeling as sort of the weather, whether it's stormy or cloudy or sunny or all different things. In California right now, we have some fires going on. So there's all different kinds of weather, and I think it's a really nice metaphor for how we're feeling. So that's sort of going to be the theme for the evening. And so it's a great time right now to grab some basic art supplies before we get started. So if you have paper on you, if you have any pencils, pens, I always tell people you can even just use Post-it notes if you want, if that's around by your desk space, or markers, colored pencils, pastels, anything that you are wanting to experiment with is perfectly fine. So take a moment or so if you haven't gotten that stuff together, and we're going to get started. And also, of course, I like to say that if you don't feel like making art tonight, especially if you're not feeling well and it feels a little triggering to your symptoms, that's totally fine. You can still participate. You can sit and hang out and just enjoy and relax with us tonight. So for the next few moments, I'd like for you to find a place in the room to focus your gaze, or you can close your eyes. Feel free to shut your camera off during this time if it makes you more comfortable too. And just take a breath. Just notice how you're feeling. Notice what you're coming in to the space with tonight. How was your day? How are you really doing? Maybe it's been busy or hectic, slow. Maybe it's been a really good day or a really hard day. Just gentle breathing in and out, focusing on that inhale and that exhale. Just breathe in normally what your body naturally wants to breathe in, that natural rhythm and pace of the body. And let's see if we can just collectively set an intention tonight to explore, be open to whatever will come up for us. Recognize that there's really no right or wrong way to be creative. And there's no mistakes here. There's no expectations, really. It's a judgment-free place. We're all here to support each other. As you settle in, just see if you can set this intention for yourself to just lean into this process for tonight. And, maybe even do a scan of your body right now. Notice if there's any areas of tension or stress physically. You can check in with your head and your neck and your shoulders, your eyes and your ears. Things that we don't really notice usually as we're going through our day. If you notice any areas of tension or stress or pain, just see if you can imagine your breath filling those areas of your body. And as you exhale, just releasing all of that energy that's there. can scan down your body to notice your arms and your hands. Just repeating that process of noticing and breathing into any areas of discomfort. Notice your lungs filling with air and oxygen, and notice your spine, your abdomen, your pelvic area, scanning down to your legs. See if you can feel yourself just getting a little heavier with each moment that you notice what's there. Breathe into your legs and your knees, your calves. Don't forget about your feet. How are your feet doing? Were you on your feet today or staying put? And now take a moment to notice your mind. And notice if it's active or busy, if you feel distracted. Are there any thoughts that are just popping in, trying to take your attention right now and take you away from noticing what's in your body? Give those thoughts a moment of your attention now. See if you can just acknowledge what's there. What might be on your mind? And now take a moment to turn to yourself emotionally, which can be difficult for us to do. And try to understand what emotions might be present for you right now. Are you feeling open? Are you feeling excited about this process? Are you feeling fatigued or frustrated? Maybe sad or disappointed? Notice if there's any way that you're feeling right now and give that some attention. And if you do notice something, try to see if there's any place in your body where you can feel these emotions bubbling up from. And you may even start to notice the connection between these emotions you're having, whether they're strong or subtle, and your thoughts. And they're often connected. And just take another breath here as you continue to notice what's going on for you in this space now. And if you feel overwhelmed at all throughout this process, remember that you can always return to your breath. Now that we've sort of checked in a little bit, maybe we know what's going on in our body, we know a little bit more about what's on our mind, maybe something bugging us or just something that we're thinking, something we're feeling. See if you can take a moment to capture a visual of what would your weather be like right now if your emotions were the weather. Does it feel stormy? Does it feel like a summer day? Does it feel tumultuous like a hurricane or a fire? Maybe it's a little bit cloudy. Maybe it's even hard to visualize. And if it's hard to visualize, just see if there's anything that's coming up for you as we're reaching this topic of weather. See if there's something you can imagine or experience for yourself. Now imagine that you're really in this place, whether it's dark and stormy or comfortable and calming on the ocean or in a field. Just see if you can take a moment to really imagine for yourself what it would be like to experience the weather wherever you imagine yourself to be. And notice the temperature of the air. Notice if the wind is blowing at you. Do you feel hot or cold? As you continue to inhale, just see if you can even smell the air in the space. See if you notice any sounds, if there's any animals or wildlife, plants or trees brushing up against each other, crashing waves, whatever it might be for you. Take this moment to really take in and experience the space. And recognize as you're sitting with this weather and this in this space that you're also sitting with yourself, and you're taking this time to really be present for yourself. And that's a hard thing to do as we're so busy. Just take a few moments here. This is your time to acknowledge. Noticing your surroundings and breathing into your lungs as deeply as you can. Breathing in whatever way is comfortable for you. Taking a few more breaths in the space, just again inhaling, and as you inhale, releasing anything that's in your body. And as you exhale, just imagine that you're letting it go here. You can let go of whatever's you're hanging on to right now. And when you feel ready, there's no rush, certainly, but when you feel ready, you can start to come back into our space together. You can open your eyes or stretch a little bit. I like to stretch out my arms and my neck. And if you have supplies with you to create something, you can take a bit of inventory of what you have in your space. Notice your art materials that you've brought. Notice the paper in front of you and really see if you can capture for yourself some kind of visual of what you imagined or experienced during this meditation. Maybe it wasn't very visual. Some people have a hard time visualizing, and that's totally normal and okay. But if there's any words that came up for you, you can feel free to write those down. If there's any way that you want to just reflect on this experience through creating something visual, writing, you can even draw the space that you imagined, if that feels like a more concrete thing to really focus on. But for the next 10 minutes or so, this is going to be your time to continue this process of breathing and just being present with your art supplies, noticing how the materials feel on the paper, remembering that there's no right or wrong, almost like being brought to back to a childlike state. The artist Picasso, he made his life goal about returning to being an amateur childlike artist. And that's really what this is about. You can even scribble if you want. Give yourself permission to do whatever it is that your hand is guiding you to do. I know I've got some scribbles going on here. And we're going to work quietly for about 10 minutes or so. Feel free to put on music if you'd like, if that helps for you. Anything that's going to help keep you in this space. Make sure to keep your microphone off. I think everyone's done a great job of that so far. I'm going to mute myself for a few minutes as we work together and check in with you periodically over the next several moments, okay? I like to remind people that as we're going through this process, sometimes our inner critic can come up and it can make it difficult to create freely. So really notice if there are any apprehensions you have or difficulties in your process, maybe barriers or blockages that are making it hard to just create freely right now. And notice those thoughts, but also see if you can continue to create freely despite those thoughts. It's really important. I think we all have a desire to express ourselves authentically, and sometimes our inner critic can get in the way of that. Our inner critic can certainly be helpful and useful for any perfectionistic qualities, right? When we're at work or when we're doing something important, but right now we just get to play. So tell your inner perfectionist they can take a little bit of a break. You have a few more minutes, just keep working. You may not finish what you're working on. That's okay. You can keep working on it after we end, or you can always revisit it. Just a few more moments of working, and then we'll take a couple minutes to check in. Okay, I want to be respectful of our time. I know we're coming up to 8 o'clock. See if we can take the next moment or so to find a good place to wrap up. I see some of you are looking like you're finished. If you're finding a good stopping point, please feel free to turn on your camera. I like to just check in with everybody after we take that little moment, that teaser of creative time together. It goes by really fast. But I'd like to open it up if anybody has anything that you want to share with the group, anything that came up for you or that you found interesting or helpful. No pressure or requirement to talk, but if you would like to, the space is yours now. It's sometimes really helpful for us to hear and even see what each other has done.
Does anyone want to share?
Well,
I
I
saw
can
Lynn.
share something.
Okay, great. I see a couple
Yeah.
people. James, maybe you want to share first and then.
No, let
Lindsay.
somebody else go first. That's okay, because
Oh.
mine isn't all that important.
No, Jim, go ahead.
I'm just thinking, I've been focusing on replacing a spa lately
Mm,
that's broken. And what I drew was basically a spa and then a dealership and me with hail pouring down because the dealers are so lack values and so double talk and everything. It's just turned into a nightmare, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind. But the mindfulness thing certainly helped me put things in perspective and take a step
yeah.
back. And because of that, I have a feeling of what I now need to do to get what I need to do accomplished in the most minimal stressful way possible. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for sharing that. That sounds incredibly stressful. And yeah, that metaphor of the hailstorm is very strong. It's a very strong image there. Wow. Saw Jamie in the chat says it was helpful mentioning the weather. Yeah, having a location and a background is helpful. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Deanie, did you want to share something?
I thought it was very interesting that you talked about the inner critic. I like to call it the little voice. And once I've made a decision and the little voice keeps nagging at me, I tell the little voice, be quiet. I've made a decision and I know I'm right. Go away, little voice. And I learned that in a stress management class. And it really works for me. Once I've made a decision, the little voice keeps nagging at me. Maybe you shouldn't do it this way. Maybe you should have done it the other way or whatever. And it's an inner critic. And I thought it was very interesting that you called it the inner critic because that's what it is. And you tell that inner critic, I know, I hear you, but I've made my decision and I know I'm right.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I love that, right? Like you can really talk to that part of yourself. And I think that little critic or that little voice, it can inhibit our mindfulness sometimes. It can, like I was saying, it's not a bad thing all the time. It has a place in our life, but when we're really trying to focus on ourselves and our own needs, it can be hard. So yes, you can communicate with it in a way. Absolutely.
For me, it works in both ways, because if in this case I hadn't made a decision and the mindful caused me to focus on what you might refer to as the inner critic, and it made me realize that the way that I was pursuing something, my ladder was leaning against the wrong wall.
Interesting. Yeah, it gave you a moment to reflect.
Yeah, that I should somehow listen to my gut feeling and my conscience rather than trying to pursue something that has a likelihood of failure based on history. So it can work both ways.
That's great.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Deanie was saying about like the inner critic. Ironically, I have like a OCD support group at 8 o'clock, but because I feel like just the fact that I couldn't finish is like really, really, really bothering me. But
yeah,
I was pretty like proud of myself that I was able to just like think of something really quickly instead of like just kind of overthinking it. And I really didn't realize how much like my body was like so tense from maybe emotional stuff. When you were like talking about that, I have like so much tension. I like feel it in every part of my body right now, and I think it could be really connected to, I think everything's connected really. So
wow, thank you so much for
it.
sharing that. Yeah, Lindsay, I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you were able to take that with you. Sally, did you want to share something? Oh, I think you're on mute. We can't really hear you. Or your volume's down maybe. Can y'all hear Sally or no?
No.
No, okay.
I'll go. Sally's getting, if you want.
Yeah, Nicole?
I thought we were going to draw, right? So then I was like, oh, wait, I don't know what to draw. So and then you said, or you can write down thoughts. So I just realized I have like, you can't really see a lot of this, but I have all these thoughts in my head, right? And I I started with writing tightness in jaw and then worrying about something. What am I worried about? And then I wrote down all the things that I'm thinking about. And then it made me realize like, oh, these are what's causing all this tension in my tummy. And so writing it
Wow.
down makes me realize, okay, these are all the things that are on my mind. And then the other thing I wrote was the things that are making me happy. Like my daughter is sitting here. She came.
Oh, hi.
There's Devin. And she's drawing. But
Oh, cool.
speaking of the inner critic, she looked at me and she's like, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be them telling us what to draw. And I said, no, you can draw whatever you want. And she said, I don't think I want to do this. And she ripped out the page and I looked over at her and then all of a sudden she started drawing. So she almost gave up because of her inner critic.
Wow.
But she
Wow.
persevered and now she's going to town over here.
Well, that's awesome. And you know what? Sometimes it is hard, right? I think when I run these groups, a lot of people are like, well, what do I draw? You know, and we want to hold on to something specific, but it's actually more of a challenge for us to determine for ourselves what we feel like we need to do, right? And it forces us to do a little bit more work internally. So that's why I intentionally like to leave it a little open-ended. You know, sometimes I am more structured, but it sounds like, yeah, you're all taking it in the right direction. So great job, everybody.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank
I'm
you.
back. I'm back.
Oh,
I'm,
hey,
and I'm here
Sally.
with my earphone. Okay, so you had asked us while we were meditating to visualize where we'd like to be,
Mm,
and so that's what I drew. Because we're in the desert and it's 100 plus, and it's been like that all month and all last month and the month before, and I knew exactly where I wanted to be, and so I drew that, and that was at a beach, at the park part, just looking at people in the sand, watching the boats go by, and that just brought coolness over me.
Wow.
So, you know, and I never realized that I could visualize where I'd like to be and meditating rather than concentrate on my problem. I thought about, well, what would I like to do? Now, the question is, how am I going to get to do it? That's another situation, but that's what I drew.
That's amazing. That's excellent. Great. And you took it in the direction you needed to go. And that's the most important part is for, you know, all these things that, you know, I've shared are just sort of suggestions or invitations, but it's really important that you take it all, you know, where you need to go with it. And I love that. That's excellent. Great job. Lori, do you want to share a little bit?
Hi. I based on your like recommendations of weather and things like that, I found like I've made some like progress on things lately, like coming here for the first time. So it
Wow.
made me think of like transitional seasons. So it made me think of like spring and fall. So that's kind of what I drew. And from the beginning part, which was so relaxing, it just made me think of like swooping lines. So I drew a lot of things with like big swooping lines and things like that.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad.
It was great.
Yeah, the seasons are a great metaphor for our change and transition. And I know that we're kind of going over time, but if we want to hold up what we worked on, just so everybody could see, don't feel like you have to, but this was mine. Mine's like a stormy sea right now because I've had kind of a stressful day. But wow, oh, so cool, everybody. Hey, Katie, you and I got the same thing going on here.
Yeah.
Wow, I love it. Great.
That's awesome, Nicole. Is that what your
Oh.
daughter drew?
Yeah, that's what Devin drew. Handles makes her happy, which is ice cream. And then she's stressed about her best friend is not going to be in school next year with her. So she got something that makes me
Oh.
happy and something that makes me tense.
Wow, great job, Devin. That's cool.
Yeah, that's sweet, Nicole.
Yeah,
That was cool, Heidi, too.
yeah, I love all of it.
Yeah,
Oh, thank
great,
you so
everybody.
much. Yeah, I think I'm glad that we were able to meet today. I always feel much better running these meetings as well after a stressful day too. So I'm in this with y'all and thank you for your participation. I really appreciate that and your openness to it, to the art process. It's hard as an adult to be creative and to play, but you're all doing that. So great job.
Yeah,
And
It was great. Thank you. Thank you so much for those that joined us. It's always wonderful when we have Jennifer. I love doing this. I always say my art is like a 5-year-old art, but I always have fun.
Exactly. Yep. That's great.
I love seeing those faces from my support group, some that I haven't seen in a long time, but it's wonderful. If anyone on here is from Denver and is going to the Denver Walk on Saturday, I will be in Denver. So come find me and say hello. And if not, we hope to see you at the next mindfulness. So thank you for joining,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Jen.